Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's Achieving Excellence in Nonprofit Board Service webinar presented by the Vanderbilt Alumni Association. My name is Drew Webb, and I am the Assistant Director in the Alumni Association. Today's presentation is just one example of how we are here to support you in your career and personal and professional development, and I encourage you to check out some of our other resources on vuconnect.com, including the Career Advisor database and over 20 archived webinars on topics ranging from networking to how to create a startup. We decided to host a webinar on nonprofit boards because we heard from so many young alumni who are seeking ways to be involved and give back in meaningful ways to their communities. We found the perfect person to lead this presentation and are fortunate to be joined today by Vanderbilt alumna and nonprofit consultant Jennifer Chalos. Jennifer is a seasoned veteran in the nonprofit world with 20-plus years of experience serving various organizations in Tennessee and Atlanta, both internally on staff and as an independent consultant. Throughout her extensive career, Chalos has helped to raise millions of dollars for the 30-plus organizations with whom she has worked, including various universities and statewide and local nonprofits. Chalos' areas of expertise include campaign and general development feasibility and evaluation, campaign leadership and management, corporate sponsorship, foundation relations, grant writing, major gift planning and acquisition, board development and training, and annual fund programming and special event fundraising. Chalos earned a Master's of Education with a focus in institutional advancement from Vanderbilt and a Bachelor's of Arts in Political Science from the University of Georgia. She is a graduate of the Young Leaders Council and serves on the boards of Safe Haven Family Shelter and Bookham. In addition to her role at Jennifer Chalos and Associates, Chalos is an expert consultant and educator with a Center for Nonprofit Management in Nashville, Tennessee. We are recording today's presentation that will last about 30 minutes with time at the end for questions. If you have questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to type them into the question box, and I will make sure that these are addressed at the end of Jennifer's presentation. I'm pleased to now hand over today's presentation to Jennifer.
Thank you. Thank you, Drew. Good afternoon. As you heard, I'm Jennifer Chalos. I'm the owner of Jennifer Chalos and Associates. We're nonprofit consultants. I'm also a proud graduate of Vanderbilt's Peabody program that focuses on education and focuses on higher education as well as institutional advancement. My expertise, as you heard, is in nonprofit leadership and philanthropy, and I'm happy to be here today to share that information. My current clients, just of note to sort of give you the full spectrum that I'm bringing to you, are Second Harvest Food Bank of Middle Tennessee, the National Museum of African American Music, Agape Animal Rescue, Humanities Tennessee, Room in the Inn, Communities and Schools of Tennessee, Nashville Public Education Foundation, Nashville Ballet, and LEAP organization. Throughout the year, I have about 10 different organizations that I serve, and they are typically in Tennessee, but some serve internationally. I serve on the board, as Drew mentioned, of Bookham, and I'm on the Emeritus Board of Safe Haven Family Shelter in Nashville. And my previous experience on board service has been with the Mental Health America of Middle Tennessee, the Children's House, which is a Montessori school, and the Chestnut Group, which is a group of artists. I'm an active volunteer with many different nonprofits throughout the year, and I do what I can to serve my community in that manner. Today I'm going to share information with you from my experiences, from research, from work and serving with nonprofits, and I hope that you will be inspired to take action and to dig deeper in your work with these businesses that are impacting our communities. I began my service on boards about 16 years ago when I moved from Atlanta to Nashville, and my goals when I did that were to learn more about Nashville and what made it tick, to network and to meet new people, to gain professional experience and to serve. I'm sure you have had similar situations, but I do want to say that I credit these experiences for getting me to where I am today in my professional career and also my personal life. I want to start by telling you a little bit about background information here. So what is a nonprofit? And a nonprofit is internationally referred to as a non-governmental organization. So I may refer to a nonprofit as an NGO at some point in this presentation. So a nonprofit is an organization with the purpose of which is something other than to make a profit. Surplus revenues further achieve an organization's purpose or mission, and the revenue goes back into the organization. It is not distributed to shareholders as a profit or dividend. Nonprofits are dedicated to furthering a particular social cause or for advocating for a position in a purpose. Nonprofits are typically are all formed in the United States by filing bylaws or articles of incorporation, or even both, in the state in which they expect to operate. often nonprofits, when they want to raise money, because not all will want to do that, they will file with the U.S. government, federal government, for recognition of income tax exempt status. A nonprofit may be a trust or an association of members, and that type of situation, the difference between a public trust or an organization that's a trust is one that is not is an organization of public trust that is a community service organization that focuses on delivering programs and services to the community, the larger community, that either aid or research or educate. A member-serving organization, or one that's an association, will serve a smaller group and will benefit a particular group, and that might include like a mutual society, a trade union, credit unions, or industry associations. The difference between an organization, a nonprofit that governs by membership, is that members will come together, typically in an annual meeting, to vote on policy and differences in programs and bylaws, whereas an organization that's governed by a board or a board of trustees or board of directors will come together on a regular basis, and it's not something that's just for the benefit of a local group. It's run by a board of trust. So there are more than 10 million nonprofits in the world, and I will say this is not this documentation that I'm going to share with you, the numbers varied in different places where I researched, but I'm locking in on more than 10 million because there is at least more than 10 million. And these nonprofits around the world, among them, there's at least 2 million in India, there's at least 1.8 million in the US, there's at least 1.3 million in France, 700,000 in Australia, about 580,000 in Germany, 400,000 in Brazil, and 100,000 in Peru. These countries were focused on for this presentation because they were ones that had documentation where they collected information about how many nonprofits, and they had formal structures in place in order to understand where their nonprofits were and what they were doing to serve. So just to give you some background, there obviously are other countries that have nonprofits. Among the top 500 non-governmental organizations or nonprofits, Western Europe actually has 1/3 of all those top 100 organizations. The US and Canada are in the second spot with 151 top organizations, and what makes a top NGO is one that follows best practices, one that has the newest ideas in the sector. So that's the evaluation that's given to giving these groups the top 500. South and Southeast Asia have about 10% of the top 100, about 50 in this region. Latin America and Caribbean, there's approximately 40. In East Asia, there's about 26, or there are 26. In Eastern Europe and Russia and the Middle East and North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, there's about 20 organizations each. And in Australia, Central Asia, and online, there's less than 10 organizations each. Online, my understanding is that there's not one country that organization serves within. So nonprofit organizations, in focusing on the U.S., we've got over 2 million that are in this universe. There are active, though, about 1.8 million. And in researching, I actually saw another organization that noted 1.4. So let's just do between 1.4 and 1.8 million nonprofits exist in the U.S. The top 5 that are over 100,000 are California, Texas, New York, and Florida. Of note, the nonprofit sector is the 3rd largest industry in the U.S., and nonprofits make up about 10% of the workforce, with 11.4 million jobs in the U.S. About $370 billion was donated in 2015, which is the last point of record. 2016 will come out in about June, to nonprofits, which is pretty impressive. We all can be a part of that. And I will note, too, as a fundraising professional, most of those donations come from individuals. So thank you to all of you on the phone who are giving to nonprofits in the U.S. as an individual. And nonprofits engage, and many of you may already do this, about 62.8 million volunteers every year. So it's pretty impressive how our country participates individually and otherwise. Here's our whole country, and within this you can see, if you look closely, each state, and you find yourself, because I understand that many of you are coming from all over the country, there are thousands of nonprofits in each state. As I mentioned earlier, California has the most, and we've got, of course, Texas, then New York, Florida, and Pennsylvania as the top 500. They have over 100,000, top 5 rather. They have over 100,000 different nonprofits in their communities, or in their states. So there are different categories of nonprofits, as you already maybe know, and there's arts, culture, and humanities, and those will focus on performing arts, explore different visual arts, they will preserve cultures and places, they will promote the distribution of ideas, and there's a variety of different nonprofits like that around the country. Other nonprofits focus on the environment and animals to perform recycling, wetlands management, garden clubs, zoos, sanctuaries, humane societies. That's just a few different examples of what those might look like. Then there's organizations that focus on education and research, and we know one very well. That's Vanderbilt University, of course. And then we've got those that focus on, well, generally that focus on intellectual development from cradle to grave, and then, of course, the research and furtherance of science, technology, and social sciences. Health and Human Services focus on issues that concern the body or mind, like hospitals, treatment centers, disaster relief, playgrounds, child advocates, crime victims advocates, associates, job training, housing, you name. You probably can think of some in your communities. And of course, there's the public societal benefit, like protecting civil rights and liberties, volunteerism, voter education, fraternal groups, employee associations, cemeteries, benefits providers, just to name another bunch. And then, of course, there are religious organizations, which include places of worship, as well as organizations that are dedicated to interfaith issues. And then finally, we've got international organizations that focus on issues that are outside of the U.S. borders, and they provide relief, human rights, peace, security, and a whole slew of different issues. Now, to figure out what kind of a nonprofit might fit you, I've got 3 different resources that I'm pointing to that I actually go to often to try to sort of get a gauge for where an organization lies within its own community, but also how it performs financially, what its board makeup might look like, and what kind of programs they serve. The first one I'm going to focus on is GuideStar. GuideStar is a free resource. You can pay and get other bells and whistles, but I am currently logged in under mine. I would encourage that you set up your own if you're interested in finding out more about nonprofits. But what you can do on this is search a specific organization. I'm going to search Vanderbilt if I can type. You can also search fields of interest. So if you're not sure what you want to do, but you know that you live in Nebraska and you want to find out every organization that focuses on health, you can do a search to find all health organizations that do that. You can get even more specific and add a zip code or a specific mile radius to help you to find something. So what you find in this, and what I go into this to look for, let's look at Vanderbilt here, because Vanderbilt's got a lot of places here. I look at their 990s, which is a formal filing with the IRS that will offer financial background. You can find a summary of the organization. You can find program information. You can find financials as well as information about their operations. From a financial standpoint, I look at 990s. I'll look at, this Vanderbilt has reported 990s from 2011, all the way back to 2011. So you can identify, if you've logged in, this information. And in a 990, you can learn about the board, you can learn about their programming, you can learn about how, if this is a grant-giving organization, how it gives grants or receives them, what their top employer gets paid. You can find out also their financials too, and it usually covers several years, not just one, so you can get a sense for their financial health. Let me go to GuideStar first. That's just GuideStar, sorry. Charity Check is what I call Charity Navigator, is another nonprofit service that's provided. This is free. Again, I signed up. I did register. I have a login. We're currently logged in under my name. This is a great way to sort of check the health of an organization. Not every organization participates, but if they're in GuideStar, they're likely at least listed in here. Some organizations will fill out all their information. I mentioned earlier, and Drew did too, that I was on the board. I'm an emeritus board member now for Safe Haven Family Shelter. They're based in Nashville. They actually received a very high rating a couple of years ago, and they maintain that high rating. So nonprofits may be scored here too, so you can get a sense to shortcut, like, is this an organization that's credible? Is this an organization that meets financial accountability and transparency? And it gives you some background too on their expenses, how they spend their money, any kind of policies that they have in place, and their staff and their programming. So this is a good way to sort of get to know a nonprofit and get a sense for what's out there once you get a sense. And you can search by a nonprofit name. You can search by field again there and by state. The final resource I'm going to show you is called Giving Matters, and this is actually a source that's for local communities. For Nashville or Middle Tennessee organizations. What you can do, this is provided by the Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee, and you can search a nonprofit, and similar to what you saw in the original 2 resources, you can find out background information. This is much more, I have to think about what I'm writing, National Museum of African American. There we go. This will provide, I can't type them right, sorry. Bear with me for a minute. This is one of my clients. They have, this resource will provide some background on this organization, including their mission statement, who their leadership is, who's governing it. It will give you their audit statements, their budget, their program summaries. I'm going to show you just a summary page here. This is a great resource for finding Middle Tennessee organizations and what they have to offer. Most organizations, if they want to get funding from foundations, will report and complete this in full. So it's a great resource. When I am looking at a new client, I will go to this as a resource to find out if this organization has their act together. If they are not reviewed, some of them will have like, it'll say like selected not to be reviewed or is not in good standing. So that'll give you a sense for what's going on, and you can investigate further if this is one that you really, really want to serve. National Museum is not currently in that status, thank goodness. Okay, so back to this. I would recommend going into these and using these resources and others to get a sense for what might work for you. So there's specific roles that boards play, and I'll get into that now. A board is a board of directors. They determine and track policies and procedures. Different from a board of directors, an organization staff will carry out the plans and implement the policies. So there is a separation between a governance body, which is the board of directors, and the staff. And there's you want to keep a fine line there when you're serving a board to not meddle in the day-to-day staff programs and management. You hire an executive director in order to let them manage that. And if you don't like the executive director, you replace them if you don't like what's going on. But it's not healthy for a board to meddle in the day-to-day. In fact, I would say that it can be very damaging to a nonprofit. So boards are responsible for hiring the top executive director. The board is hiring, a board is responsible for hiring a person to assist the board in developing and then disseminating plans and policies to the organization staff. The board, in hiring this executive director, that executive director will ensure that the staff understands and carries out planning directives and brings staff ideas or concerns to the board's attention. This person's primary role is to be the face of the organization. So the board is responsible for hiring that person, but also making sure that they're representing the organization well and managing it well. A board is responsible for strategic planning. They engage in active strategic planning to achieve organizational goals. It's a process that involves the executive director, and it may involve staff, but all board members should be involved and should play an active role to ensure that everyone's on board with what the organization wants to do going forward. And board is also responsible for policy development and oversight and management. As I mentioned earlier, you hire an executive director or a leader, you appoint a leader if it's a volunteer-run organization to make sure that the day-to-day, that the programming, that the mission, that the work's being done, that money's being spent well, and that things are going as it's supposed to go to according to the strategic plan. A board is also responsible for budgeting. So financial matters, they're actually the utmost important job and concern of a nonprofit board because nonprofits rely on voluntary donations to fund its efforts. So the board is the accountability structure that to the public to make sure that things are functioning right. Whenever a board meets, typically they go, whether they meet 3 times a year or every month, they will go over the budget and sort of look at a year-to-date and get a sense for how the organization's going. If an organization is required to have an audit, a financial audit done, a board will review that and make sure that the organization's in compliance and offer help, too, if a nonprofit's gone awry. A board is also responsible for fundraising. I know that boards don't always like to hear that, but fundraising is a very critical component to the survival of a nonprofit. Charitable gifts are the lifeblood of an organization, so it's everyone's responsibility to participate in supporting in one way or another. And it doesn't mean asking for money, it means connecting people, making sure that the organization is reaching out and has a plan and is working to raise money ongoing. So without a committed board to tackle all of these tasks, a nonprofit can quickly run adrift. And without some goals in place, obviously the plans won't be achieved, and obviously the organization can go awry. So it can damage its reputation. So what makes a good board? One resource that I've now subscribed to and get as a newsletter, it's a fundraising expert. So if you're interested in fundraising, it's good for that. But it's also helpful too if you serve a board. Her name is Gail Perry. Her program, I think her company is Gail Perry and Associates, but her website is fired at fundraising. And again, you don't have to be just interested in fundraising to subscribe, but a lot of this comes from that. So Gail says, and we've added, you want a good board has the big picture and can handle tough questions. A good board is accountable. They share expectations, and that's through that strategic plan, as well as just an overview of management through the executive director. You all agree that you'll invest your time and talent, and then you'll commit to the mission. A board educates itself well enough so that it can talk passionately and with urgency about the needs and the reason for other people to get involved. Boards are also active and self-initiating fundraisers. Yes, I'm a development professional, so I have to say that, but you want to be as helpful as you can in that area. Boards have strong ties to and an understanding of their communities too. So I know when I've served on boards or when I'm serving nonprofits in general, I'm always thinking about things that are going on, current events, and people that are moving to the city, whether it be a new business, to think about, how can I help bring that to this organization? So as you build your own network, it's great for you to try to connect connect your nonprofit as much as you can. A good board also has diversity, and it doesn't mean just in color, but in age, in gender, in occupation, in skills, in experience, in background. Some of the best boards that I've served on have people from their service community serve. And it's not necessarily as a voting board member, but someone who has either benefited from the services of that organization at some point in their life, and they can speak to the full board about their experiences. There's also just a lot of value in having different people. I will say most boards that I'm helping to shape, I've served on nominating committees before, I look to have attorney or legal expertise. I look to have accounting or finance expertise, and all those sort of help to have a voice in the room while you're reviewing the health and even if just to have a resource in place if something were to happen. So there are typically nominating committees, and if there isn't one, it's good to form one on a board so that you can evaluate what your board currently looks like and think about what you can add to it. So how do you choose a nonprofit board? There's a whole lot that I've given you so far that will sort of give you the full scope of nonprofits and what you can choose and what those responsibilities are. I have a video I want to show you. It's a few minutes long, and it will let you know a little bit about what to look for from your perspective. So here you go.
And those board members who show up because or because they have a lot of the organization, back to the board, chair, or another organization about how to create value for that organization. See how they all shows you have an interest, show you how they may interact. First thing in the world is going on, then finding out it's not what I thought it was. Or that really
testing them out a little bit. Yeah, and what you do, play with them.
Selecting words, what role of that one? All the way from, first of all, about size. So, those small nonprofits, there are okay. But you want to be sure that if an organization is under 2 million, then you will have a much more hands-on role as a board member. 5 million involvement, then boards like the Stanford Board of Trustees has even less oversight in terms of day-to-day. So if you really want to get involved in strategy, I would encourage the students. And finding smaller boards have much more equal opportunity for hands-on engagement. So I would look at the size of the organization in terms of, and then also in terms of the number of employees.
What are they looking for? Every board I've ever worked with has seen one board. So every board is doing different things with fundraising, stations, and some meetings. And so you really have to look yourself at patients. At the end of a period of time, you feel good that you. And third to that, this will sound really weird, but every young person, I think that you need to be able to and feel good about the fact that you tried with this one organization, this one part, but be fine with resigning. Things aren't working out. And be okay if maybe the nominating committee doesn't re-nominate you. I mean, there's always some non-profit out there. And it takes
I think it takes a great chair, right, and the vision of the organization before you really
I think a board service like go out on the page, like organization get married sometimes. But I think the best thing is to start by doing and get started. And if you feel you made a mistake, transition off that, but stay in the social.
Okay. I hope that was helpful to you all. I'll get back into our presentation here. So what I get from that, and I hope you did too, was that you should go through and ask a lot of questions and not wait for somebody to come to you, and not also be afraid to do a lot of exploration to see for right fit, and not get offended if it's not the right fit when you're in it. So just to summarize, I think from this video what I get is that to determine fit, you want to do a lot of questioning. So you want to ask those questions, the who, what, when, where, why, how, all those questions. Interview and talk to the CEO and board chair, or identify at least who they are and get a sense for what kind of role they play in the community. I'm going to open all these up here. So size, determining whether or not you have time to give to an organization to determine what size board or what size organization you want to serve. What was noted by Laura Lauder in that was that an organization that most organizations are $2 million or less in a budget, and those organizations may require, and I'll tell you from my own experience, they will require more of your time. They may meet more frequently. They may need more of your engagement on a committee to help drive the strategic planning. But a larger board, if you look at a 10 million plus type of board, like a Vanderbilt, or they mentioned Stanford here, your involvement will be much less. So you don't want to go into there with the expectation that you'll be hands-on and getting involved in committees that will really be involved with pieces. So it depends on what works for you. And it may be, too, that when you're starting out, if this is your first board, you look for that smaller one to really kind of get a good overview and sense of an organization, or smaller sized organization, rather, so that you can really get a full sense of it, and then work your way onto other boards as you build a reputation and you get more experience. I don't know that they covered this, but age of an organization makes a big difference too. One that's been operating for 20, 30, 100 years has some clear-cut ways and a reputation and history that you can look up. One that's new, what I would look for is just what else is out there, who else is doing this, is there duplication, will this become a complicated mission to make stand out among others in this community. Obviously, location matters. If they're boards, if you're on a board and they meet only in Haiti and you live in California, it's going to be a little difficult to participate. So you might want to think about the location of the meetings, but also where the organization is. And then, of course, the clients that they serve, the programs, the work that they do, if it resonates with you, if you have a passion for it, if you agree with the way that they do things. I mean, I wouldn't serve on a board where you disagree with everything that they do and you feel like you want to just change the method or knock it down. It's a waste of your time. And, of course, stature and reputation. Look at those guide stars and those other resources that I told you, to look at the financials, to get a sense for how does it stack up and is it performing at a good place. And then, of course, other potential opportunities. When I look at boards and when I look at nonprofits that I want to work for as a consultant, or to serve as a volunteer or a board member, I'm always trying to think, like, well, what potential do they have? Because I'll be with them for 3-4 years sometimes. I want to see that they have some place to go, that there's something that they can do that's beyond where they are now. And it may not be the case, but it's something that will be inspiring for you as you serve. I totally encourage, and they did say this in the video, that you get involved, volunteer, donate, attend their events and programs. One thing that I do with a nonprofit is I'll make a donation, and it may be $25, $50 or something like that, to see, or $10, whatever the number is, to see how they respond. And if an organization is really slow to respond or they never do, that's a sign right there that they don't really appreciate their donors and there may be something bigger going on. So I usually hold them accountable, and I'll call and find out what the heck happened here. But that's one way to see how they treat donors, too. There are some really impressive organizations that will send a handwritten note and a tax letter within that, like a couple days of receipt. So that's something you can test and see. Of course, volunteering, you can understand how they're organized, if they're organized at all in getting your volunteer experience together and you can see how something operates and runs. And then, of course, attending events, you can sort of see who else is there, who else is involved, and what kind of impact that they have and involvement from other community members. So I've mentioned Safe Haven a couple times here. I'm a big fan, so I would suggest looking them up if you want to. But I want to tell you briefly my story with Safe Haven and how I got involved. I had already served on a couple different boards, but one that stands out to me is my experience with Safe Haven. I was out on a snowy day with my family. We were playing and sledding, and our across-the-street neighbor came over with her 3 kids, and we started talking. She knew that I was a nonprofit fundraiser, so of course she was telling me about hers and what their dilemmas were. And they were in the process of trying to figure out, they were hiring a new executive director that had an interim in place. And they had a lot of struggles going on, but they were doing well, and they had been around for a long time. So I was intrigued. She was not approaching me for the board. She was just telling me their story. So what I did next, because I wanted to know more, and what they do is they bring in the whole family to keep them together if they're homeless and make sure that they get the resources that they need in order to become independent and to find housing that's permanent. But they don't separate the wives and the husbands, and they keep the kids together, and they try to keep them in the same school district. So I knew about their work. I dug in deeper to find out more. So when I got involved, I set up a meeting with the CEO, which is a bit bold. Maybe you just might want to meet with somebody there. But I did because it's a small enough organization. While I was there waiting for the CEO, 2 of the children that were in the shelter, because their administrative offices were mixed with the housing offices or housing space, 2 of the children came by and they noticed my very big long hair that was out and started braiding it. And, you know, they asked me first, but then they started braiding my hair. And it's not everybody's going to have an experience like that. So I was sitting there waiting, and I ended up waiting longer than I wanted to, but I had the most delightful exchange with 2 children who were my children's age at the time, who were homeless. And they didn't act like they were homeless because they were well cared for at this facility. And for me, I was so moved that I went into that CEO's office and I wanted to know more and I wanted to get involved. So I offered to write a grant, so I volunteered. I wrote a grant application for them and it was successful, which is good. Beyond that, I started attending their meetings. I went to a lunch and learn, which is just an hour-long lunchtime where you can come and hear more and take a tour. After that, I plugged in. I went to their hiking event, brought some friends, and hiked with them, saw how they performed, how they did their event, and raised a little bit of money for them through that. And then at that point, they noticed that I was engaged, so they asked me if I would serve on the board. So I went through, I met with the nominating committee, asked them questions, they asked me questions, we sort of did an interview. As they mentioned the Stanford video, we dated for a little bit, I guess, and then they made an offer to serve on the board, and I accepted and served with them for 6 years. In my first 3 years, I was just a regular old board member. Within my 3rd year, they asked me if I would serve on the executive committee, and I served as secretary and did that for 2 years. It was an extraordinary experience. I saw from the beginning where I was, having a hands-on experience with this, with a client, and not hands-on, and that's a little odd to say it that way, but there was a client interaction where I actually saw the mission at work. And then I, just really had a long journey to getting to a place where I was actually hearing about the issues that they had ongoing, and also was able to celebrate some of the milestones that we were able to reach together. So I encourage you to find your own story, and if you haven't had that already, but to dig deeper and stay fresh as you can. So getting back to the presentation here, typically these are the requirements that board members are asked to fulfill when serving on a board. There may be others as well, and those are to, of course, meet and attend meetings and engage, to stay informed about the issues and the work that your nonprofit provides, to review the agenda before going to the meetings, and also support materials so that you can get a sense for what issues are at hand, to serve committees or task forces. Not all nonprofits require that, but it's a great way to get engaged further and to get more involved. Often, well, I will say, make a donation at a personal, whatever that personal level might be, to support the organization, and funders will look at that and see how much a board is involved. Informing others and making it a story that you tell about your involvement. Suggest possible other nominees. Think about others who can engage and serve alongside you. Keep up to date with the organization's field. So for my situation with Safe Haven, I'm as much up to speed as I can be on homeless issues in Nashville. Follow conflict of interest, and you will be asked to sign a conflict of interest and to tell in advance if there's a conflict that you have. And typically you can serve, but you might have to recuse yourself from a decision or a meeting. And confidentiality policies, of course. You will refrain from making, of course, special requests to the staff, making sure that you don't ask for any favors or anything that might impact your relationship with the staff and the organization. And of course, you want to assist the board in carrying out its fiduciary responsibilities. So of course, this is about a mutual relationship that you're going to have with a nonprofit. So you should also have your own expectations. Think about what you might get out of it, but what kind of value can you add? What will you also get from it? Are you interested in the mission and the purpose? Is this something that's going to be a good use of your time? Because you're probably going to spend at least an hour in meetings a couple times a year, and then attend events and be involved, and you want to make sure this is going to work for you. And of course, do you have the time, now that I've told you how much time you might have to expend with your workload and otherwise? I actually rolled off of a board, was asked to roll off of a board because I had a child and I didn't have time. I didn't have time to give, and I couldn't attend meetings. So they were like, what are you thinking? I had served them for 4 years already, and it was time for us to go, in part. Are you getting a learning experience from this? Are there opportunities for you to learn more about your community and about the nonprofit and about yourself, for that matter, and skills? Does the current board makeup and staff fit your personal and professional goals? You don't join a board necessarily to increase your professional portfolio. Some might do that, but you want to make sure that the people that you're sitting in the room with and the people that you're working with ongoing are ones that you respect, that you can relate to, or there may be 1 or 2 people that you don't like, but for the most part, are these people you can get along with and that you can find agreement with? So there's a lot of resources out there to help you learn more about serving on boards, as well as how to train to serve on a board. I went through the second to last one, Young Leaders Council. This is offered to Nashvillians and maybe throughout Middle Tennessee. But it's about a 6-week, I think, training session where once a week you get together for a couple of hours and you learn about different aspects of serving on a board. It looks like in Minnesota there's a program called MAP. Leadership Philadelphia offers that. There's the Boston Club and Robin Hood Foundation offer those. And apparently the Junior League of Los Angeles is very renowned. So there's those resources exist in different cities, and I would definitely say it's worthwhile. I had worked for nonprofits, I served with nonprofits, but I still got so much out of going through a formal training to know how to serve a nonprofit. And typically these will place you on a board too. So if you haven't already been, if you can't figure it out on your own, they'll help you to get placed. Okay, so what's next? We've learned all this information here, and I'm trying to organize it now so that you can get to action here if you're already on board or if you want to enhance your experience. So number one, network. Find out more about who's on board and who's out there. Look on those resources to find out who serves, and if you know anybody, talk to them, get to know them. Look at some of the training resources that I offered, but also think about training for yourself. You might even ask the nonprofit that you're interested in if they offer some sort of training for their board members when they're recruited. They typically have an orientation of sorts at nonprofits. Of course, do exploration and research. Make sure that you're looking at what's all out there with the resources that you can formally research through, but also just get out there, read the newspaper. Look at what's going on with those nonprofits in your community or around the world. Definitely do the testing. Get out there. Figure out, make that donation or volunteer and see how they treat you and how you're treated or how others are treated. Engage and show your interest. That's the best way, because I know when we sat on the nominating committees, we would want to know, how did this person do something? Are they already doing something for this organization? Have they already showed interest? And you, of course, want to let them know that you're interested, too. So setting up a formal meeting, either with the board chair or board members or the CEO are some of the best ways to let them know, like, hey, I'm interested. I've done my homework and I'm interested. So, okay, if you're already on a board and you're figuring out ways to plug yourself in further, I would suggest connecting others. I say connect there. Of course, connect with your nonprofit that you're serving, but connect with others. Let them know that you're on board. Let them know what you do. Bring them to what you do. Take a tour if you haven't done it in a long time. I worked at the First Center for the Visual Arts in Nashville for 4 years, and ongoing I would go through the galleries, or I would go through when it was crowded downstairs to understand why we do what we do. So from a board member's perspective, taking a tour, talking to clients and the service recipients, attending a performance, hosting friends at an event, to sort of see what others' reactions are, to understand how your organization is doing at work. Of course, if you can advocate formally to government funders or to any resource to try to push forward the policy that you're trying to make go forward, or to try to make improvements for your community, that's a resource. That's something I would encourage you to do. Of course, visit the staff. We used to, when I was on the Mental Health America board, it was a tough group. They had a lot of issues they were dealing with. We would bring breakfast to them every once in a while just to sort of engage with them and let them know we're here, we're supportive of you. We never told them what to do, though, just so you know that. And I would absolutely encourage you to roll up your sleeves and get to work and volunteer. I often tell people to host a gathering. Think about your next birthday or anniversary, or just even if it's St. Patrick's Day. If you're having a gathering, maybe encourage people, instead of bringing a gift to your birthday, to make a donation to that organization, or to hear about it, or bring the executive director so they can mingle with your friends. Of course, spread the word. We've got social media out there, and many organizations post social media. So friend them, like them, follow them, and pass their information on. That's typically what I do to support the organizations where I'm serving as a board member or working as a client. And then, of course, you can always make a donation if you want to honor someone, whether it be within that organization or just in general, or to memorialize someone and encourage others to do that too, to introduce and engage other people. So those are just some examples and ideas. Here are some of the resources that I used to pull together this presentation. They're ones that I would suggest if you want to go back into the recording to check them out. They're helpful to me, and I hope they will be helpful to you. But I'm finished, and I'm ready to take questions, and I want to say most of all how grateful I am for this opportunity, and hope you got something out of it. That's good.
Thank you, Jennifer. All right, let's switch gears here and check out some of your questions. Let's see here. How do I get back into this?
Oh, no. We're having a technical difficulty.
Yes, please forgive us. I don't know where I put the... Okay.
It's jamming up
There
for some
we
reason.
go. Okay, sorry about that, folks. Should be able to. Okay. Well, we are running a little long here anyway, so I just want to let you know if you need to go ahead and sign off, we are recording this, so.
I'll offer this. My email address is my name, Jennifer Chalos, @gmail.com. You are welcome to send me your questions individually. Again, that's Jennifer, JENNIFER CHALOS @gmail.com. And you can send your questions directly to me, and I'm happy to answer them and even get on the phone and talk if that helps. I know there were a number of them that were up there, so while we're having technical difficulties, maybe that will help. And I'm not going to get to them right now, but I'll certainly get to them within the week and let you know my answers. Oh, are we there?
Okay, no.
Okay.
I really have no idea what's
I think we
going on
died.
here.
Not literally, but online at least.
I just don't understand. Like, I just collapsed it. There we go. Okay.
There we go.
Sorry about that, folks. It disappeared. I'm not even sure what you all are seeing right now, but let's pop this out. Okay, here we go. So, Amy, how do you feel about judging charities on their overhead percentage? I watched a TED Talk about how doing so limits the distance a donation can go by restricting marketing, advertising, and retaining staff.
I love your question because I think that nonprofits work really hard, or most of the ones that I know, work really hard to keep their overhead to a minimum. And overhead, for those who don't know, are like the lights and the rent and even salaries, for that matter, for non-program people. I often coach nonprofits to look fully at their organization because clearly if the lights aren't on and your water bill's not paid and you don't have a building, then you can't function and run your programs. So I do talk to nonprofits about allocating a portion of their operating to their programming. So to get to your question, I don't feel that a nonprofit should be negatively marked for having high overhead. I do think you should dig deeper as someone who's investigating to look at it, but it does certainly limit the distance of a donation, I guess. Or yes, I would not encourage restricting donations to avoid giving to overhead. I think I've answered your question. I hope I have.
I'm just seeing the audio was not working for the video, so I really apologize for that. We'll send out the link in the follow-up email.
Okay.
We didn't have access to the question box during that portion, so I apologize for that, but thanks for letting us know.
Oh, no.
Yes, we will share a copy of this PDF of the slide so that you can click the links. So here's another question. What are some good resources for recruiting board members? We have a marketing coordinator position that we need filled, and I don't personally know anyone in my network that can fill the role.
Okay, so a board member typically wouldn't be the marketing coordinator. However, I guess what you're saying is you would want somebody with marketing expertise on your board, if I'm understanding that correctly. Is that how you read that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I would say, look at what resources are out there, because I know in Nashville, a lot of the PR and marketing firms will place people on a board from their firms to serve because they want to be active citizens as a company. But it also will lead to potential pro bono work too from that person that serves. So from a resources standpoint, I would say look at the businesses that are in town. Some of the bigger ones require board placement and service. Typically a law firm and some of the CPA firms in at least Nashville require their attorneys to get involved. I do think some of the resources I reference in this, like Young Leaders Council, the MAP one in Minnesota, Junior League is another one. Those are great resources for recruiting and finding board members. But I think stepping back and looking at what does your board need in order to fill that would be one way to do it.
Can you talk a little bit about your opinion on term limits or how long to serve on a board? I'm on a board now and we have no set term limits, so I was curious if you had any thoughts on that.
Okay, I do believe in term limits. I think that people get stale. I mentioned that I served on the Safe Haven Family Shelter for 6 years. I could have served for 9. I actually got off the board because I felt like somebody new and fresh has got to get on here to really impact it. I don't think too short a term could be hard, because I think it takes a year for any board member to really kind of understand what's going on and to get the feel for it to participate. So at least 3 years is what I would recommend. I do recommend term limits, meaning like 2 3-year terms, or I think at the most 3 3-year terms, but that's even stretching it, as I said, because it can get exhausting from the board member standpoint. I do think each year a nonprofit should talk to its board and say, here's what we expect of you, how do you feel, how are you doing, what do you think you can deliver, and be comfortable in saying, like, you know, you haven't fulfilled your term yet, but we want you to get off. Or for a board member to, in turn, to say, I've done what I think I can do and I need to get off.
Okay, great. It looks like that's all the questions. So,
okay.
Jennifer, thank you so much for sharing your insight on nonprofits. I'm certainly inspired to try to seek out a nonprofit to become involved with. And alumni, thank you all again for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you.
As I mentioned before, I'll send up a follow-up email later this week with a link to this recording, also a link to the video. Sorry about that. And we'll also send a brief survey, and we'd really appreciate your feedback. And I'll also send out registration links for our March webinars, including one on mindfulness in the workplace for Vanderbilt alumni, and another one on mental toughness that's led by an alumnus who is a sports psychologist. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thank you.